And now I want to move on to having a bit of a discussion around what we consider the talk, or some of you may have heard it as the birds and the bees. I want you to think for a moment that while I'm asking you to talk soon and talk often, as the resource says, I'm also asking you to listen. Listening is such a big part of this conversation and talking. Listening to where the young person is at, checking in and asking them what it is that they already know. That's so important. So with that in mind, I'd like you to have a think for a moment, and we're going to pause. And if you would like to contribute some of your answers or responses to the questions I'm about to ask, please feel free to drop it into the chat box, because it is all part of a greater learning experience. But I want you to think back to that time when you had the talk, the birds and the bees, the relationships, the sex talk, with a person of responsibility within your life, and to really think about how that played out for you. Do you remember who that conversation was with? How comfortable or how awkward did that conversation feel? What made that conversation feel awkward? Or what made that conversation feel comfortable? What were some of the skills and the strategies that that adult was using with you as a young person to make you feel comfortable? Or what made you feel awkward about that? Was it a one-off conversation, or was it multiple conversations? And indeed, was it a conversation at all? A conversation is about two people engaging, or was it a lecture? You were spoken at instead of spoken with. Was it a conversation at all in the sense that words were spoken, or were you just given a film to watch or a book to read? What was good about that conversation? What made those messages that that adult was giving you stick into your mind? Or what was not so good about that chat? We talk to a lot of young people and they say that the conversations that they've had, particularly in school, are not relevant to them. If they identify as a same-sex attracted young person and the education being provided in schools is all around heteronormativity, male and female, the conversations may not even apply. So think about that. Think about your experience. I can see Maddie's doing some typing in the chat box, so I assume that some people are putting up some responses there.
Just Jen.
Just Jen, just our team leader.
Totes orcs.
Totally awkward. Yeah, and for a lot of young people, the experience is really uncomfortable and really awkward. We want to provide you with some of the skills to make that a little less awkward.
There's a good comment saying my principal gave us the talk, so awkward, being spoken at, no questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's coming through someone's experience having been spoken at, not being able to engage and to ask questions. Yeah. So we want to move away from the lecturing, because I feel like young people are getting the lecture enough in their life. We want to make it a meaningful and engaging conversation. So like I said, first and foremost, start with where the young person is at. When a young person comes to me and asks a question, I actually rephrase it back to them and say, tell me what you already know. In asking that, I'm getting a gauge for what they do know and how accurate that information is. We know that young people are still identifying speaking to an adult in person as the key way that they would like to get information around sexual health and relationships. Second to that, they're speaking to their peers, or they're going online to find that information. We know that their peers aren't always going to give accurate information, nor is certain information online. Caitlin will touch base on the reliable sources of information that you can go to and that you can refer your young people to get the accurate information. But they're going to come to us, okay? Like I said before, thank them for coming to you. Thank you for coming and asking me that question. Thank you for trusting me with that. The conversation should never be just a one-off conversation, okay? It should be lots of meaningful conversations across time. And I like to refer to those as teachable moments. How do you have a teachable moment with a young person? Think about the resources that are available to you to be able to have those teachable moments. We don't have to look too far, because lots of young people are watching shows on Netflix, they're watching movies, they're watching TV shows, and they're listening to music or watching music film clips. They are a great point to start a conversation. Pause it. Ask that young person what they feel about the situation. What would they do if they found themselves in a similar situation to the young person on the TV show. There are some great Netflix series out there around young people. You can really use them as teachable resources and take those teachable moments with those young people. The dinner table conversation, get the family back to the table, okay? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, together as a unit with no technology, actually sitting down, asking each other how your day was, what did you learn at school today, what did you do at work today. We do this with my 5 and 7-year-old. Some of the responses are hilarious. What my 5 and 7-year-old do in a day, or actually what they perceive we as adults do in a day. That's even funnier still. But get back to the table, have those conversations. If it feels really awkward to have that conversation one-on-one with a young person, have it with them in a group. Get their peers together. Hey guys, I saw this on TV. I'm just wondering what your experience of that. Is there people in your peer group who are sexting? Have you had that experience at school? How do you feel about that? How can we navigate that? Have conversations in the car. They're trapped. They can't go anywhere. They're not going to jump out of a moving car. It's what my mum did every Tuesday night after physical culture. Stuck in the car listening to things about sexual health and relationships. Some of those car rides were the longest 20 minutes of my life. Others still stick with me today. Have conversations where you take it out of the home environment. You go for a nice walk, go for a bush walk, go for a beach walk. There's something far more comforting about having somebody stand next to you and having a conversation as opposed to face to face. So take some of that awkwardness away from it. Take out that direct eye contact and try not to personalize things like, oh, I think you're doing this. Generalize it. So, some young people your age might start to enter into a relationship. If you are in a relationship, please know that you can come and speak to me about what's going on. If they're going through puberty development, make yourself open and available to have those conversations, okay?
There's some good comments in here about, from your auntie or from your older sister.
Yes, absolutely. So some of us don't feel comfortable to take on that role as parents and carers. And I can actually give a fantastic example that just happened for me on the weekend. I have a niece who's 17 going on 18 and I absolutely love her to pieces. She's in year 12 at the moment. And thankfully, the minister has announced yesterday that, the Premier announced yesterday that school formals can still go ahead. That's a big win for our young people in our community at the moment. Last week, they were really hurting at the fact that they weren't going to be able to celebrate 13 years of education. So I've been touching base with her quite regularly and I got to see her in person on Saturday. And she'd been at the beach with some friends and afterwards she was just in her room, laying on her bed, having some chill out time. And I took the opportunity to go and sit down and have a conversation with her. So I knocked on the door and she loves me, so she let me come in. And we just literally laid down on the bed together, just having a chat about life and touching base. And I just happened to ask her if she was on contraception at the moment, just checking in to see if there was any relationships happening. And we were able to have some discussions around contraception and the different types. And just to check in with her and see if there'd been any unprotected sex and whether there was a need to have a sexual health checkup. And more importantly, the fact that there'd been some home done tattoos, which then led me to saying, well, we actually need to get you checked out for bloodborne viruses as well. So within that aunt role, even though her parents are fantastic, they're really open, they're supportive and caring, it's probably a bit easier for her to have those conversations with me because I'm one person removed, a little bit closer to her in age, though not much closer than her parents. But it's really important that the young people can identify a mature adult or somebody that they can go to. So it's like, if you don't feel comfortable to talk to me as your parent or carer, please identify somebody who you feel comfortable having those conversations with. And for some of you who are on here today in the youth worker role or the teacher role, that's 100% going to be you. In a lot of cases, those young people are spending more time with you than with their parents or carers. So that's something to really be thinking of as well. So not a one-off, lots of little conversations. Use those teachable moments through things like TV shows and movies. As I said before, it's not just about talking. This is about opening up a two-way conversation. And in some cases, it's as much about listening as it is about talking. Check in with them about what it is that they already know. As I said, you might be surprised about their current level of knowledge or lack thereof. We've had some experiences where, young people have come out with some doozies and we think, even with all this information and education available these days, you still think that you can fall pregnant through oral sex. Never ceases to amaze us what young people do or do not know. And that really we all have a responsibility to be educating and empowering our young people. Absolutely, it is a responsibility. I feel it's an honour and privilege to be given that responsibility. And as I said before, young people have very much indicated that they still want to hear this information from the adults in their life, not just going online to get that information. So why should we be talking to our young people about sexual health? Maddie's giving me back control of the mouse.
There were some great comments in the chat. Thanks
Yeah.
for joining in.
Yeah, so Maddie's saying there were some really good comments in the chat box. So thank you to everyone who contributed. We'll be looking over that. And if you've got specific questions or want to share the story, you can jump on and unmute yourself at the end. So why are we talking to young people about sexual health? It's really about normalising those conversations from an early age, okay? It's never too soon or too late to start these conversations with the young people in your life. The earlier you start the conversation and the more you normalise it, the better off it's going to be. And we'll touch base with that when we talk about sex positivity and what you can do towards the end. It increases a young person's personal safety, particularly when we're talking about genitals as penises and vaginas from the time that they are born. Having these conversations can help increase their confidence and self-esteem. And as we said before, that increase in confidence and self-esteem, as well as building on that young person's resilience, is going to help them in so many walks of life. We know that it leads to improved health outcomes, so that being that they're more likely to go and have sexual health checkups done, they're more likely to use protection and contraception, also avoiding an unplanned pregnancy or sexually transmittable infection. And that in having these conversations, we're preparing them. We're preparing them with the information that they need to go on to make better decisions and to have broader life experiences and skill in a positive way. What I want to touch on just here quickly is this concept of perception versus reality, because I think as adults and carers in particular, society and the media would make us believe that all young people are out there having sex. Like if you're over the age of 16, you're out there having sex, even potentially under the age of 16. It's not true. The difference between perception and reality is actually quite different. So the reality is that there's about 50% of young people in year 12, so who are aged between 17 to 18, who are not yet sexually active. 50%. So that's more than half the population of young people who are not sexually active, even though legally they could be. They're not engaging in those acts just because they've been given that information. As I said earlier, they're actually delaying that onset of first sexual experience through having the information. And even if young people within their peer groups are reporting that they're sexually active, think about, are they actually sexually active, or are they just saying that because they want to fit in? That then again comes down to the self-esteem and that sense of belonging. So what we're now going to shift into are some of the concepts or issues that are coming up for young people. Oh, I've missed a slide. No, I've got the talk when to start. That makes sense, doesn't it, to wrap that up? So I've really already touched on part of this, and that is that it's never too soon or indeed too late to start the conversation. And the great thing about the resource is it's going to help you have those conversations in an age-appropriate manner. My children, it's a penis. I've got two boys, they have penises at this stage. They identify as penises. My son was probably only about 3.5 years of age when my sister had her child. We were driving to the hospital, and from the back seat he said, "Auntie Jess pushed out a baby through her vagina." And my husband nearly ran off the road. He couldn't believe that our 3.5-year-old knew what a vagina was or could say the word. And I said, why would you not talk about penises and vaginas? It's what it is, and it's particularly important, especially in the unfortunate event if that young person experiences an unwanted sexual contact. They need to be able to really accurately describe for police records where it was that they were touched. So referring to anatomical body parts is really important and very easy to do. As we mentioned, it's never too soon to start talking to young people about self-esteem and relationships. In fact, the sooner we start talking about that and indeed role modelling those behaviours, the better it's going to be for that young person as they move on through that transition that we spoke about before. Be prepared for those questions to come in. Like I said, sometimes they might be prickly and juicy, they might be challenging, but feel honoured and privileged that the young person has come to you and feels comfortable enough to ask that question and to seek you out as a way to get that information. And to remember that it's not a one-off conversation, but indeed an ongoing conversation with lots of teachable moments throughout the young person's life.